The evening sun was slowly sinking into the ocean, spreading warm shades of gold and orange across the sky. The beach was peaceful that day. Waves rolled gently toward the shore, and the soft wind carried the calm sound of water through the air. I had come to the beach for a little quiet. Life had been busy lately. Work, responsibilities, endless routines. Sometimes it felt like the world moved too fast, and the only place where things slowed down was right here, beside the ocean. So I stood there, looking out at the horizon, watching the sun melt into the water. That's when I heard a small voice behind me. "Excuse me." I turned around. A little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, stood there looking straight at me. She had bright eyes, messy golden hair blowing in the wind, and the kind of confident expression that only kids seem to have. I smiled politely. "Yes." She looked at me very carefully, like she was studying my face for something important. Then she said something so unexpected that I couldn't help but laugh. "My mom says you're prettier than my dad." For a moment, I just stared at her. "What?" I said, half laughing. Before she could answer, I heard hurried footsteps behind her. "Emily." A woman quickly walked toward us, clearly embarrassed. She gently placed her hand on the little girl's shoulder. "Emily, you can't just say things like that to strangers." The girl, Emily, shrugged like it was no big deal. "But Mom, it's true." I tried not to laugh again. The woman looked at me apologetically. "I'm really sorry." She speaks whatever comes to her mind. "It's okay," I said with a smile. "Honestly, I think the world could use a little more honesty." She gave a small, relieved laugh. For the first time, I really looked at her. She was beautiful in a very natural way. Not the kind of beauty that tries too hard, but the kind that feels warm and real. Her long hair moved gently in the wind, and her eyes had a calm softness to them. But there was something else too. Something thoughtful. Maybe even a little tired. Emily suddenly tugged on her arm. "Mom, tell him." The woman sighed. "Emily." But Emily looked at me again and said proudly, "And you're nicer than my dad too." The moment grew a little quieter after that. The woman looked down for a second, like that sentence carried more meaning than Emily probably understood. I cleared my throat gently. "Well, I hope I'm nice," I joked. That finally made both of them smile again. Behind us, the ocean waves rolled against the sand. The sunset was getting deeper now, painting the sky with richer colors. For a few seconds, none of us spoke. Then the woman extended her hand. "I'm Sarah." I shook her hand. "Daniel." Emily crossed her arms proudly. "See, Mom. I told you he was nice." Sarah shook her head, smiling. "You say that about everyone." "No, I don't," Emily argued. "Only the good ones." I laughed. "Well, I appreciate the vote of confidence." Emily then asked the kind of question kids ask without hesitation. "What are you doing here?" "Just enjoying the beach," I answered. "What about you two?" "We come here a lot," she said proudly. "It's our favorite place." Sarah nodded. "It's peaceful here." I looked around again. The wind, the waves, the endless ocean. "Yeah, it really is." Emily suddenly ran a few steps toward the water, then turned back toward us. "Mom, look at the waves." Sarah watched her carefully. "You can go closer, but not too far." "I know," Emily shouted. "Kids always say that." I turned back toward Sarah. "You must come here a lot then." "Almost every week," she said. "Emily loves the ocean." I watched Emily jumping around near the shoreline, laughing at the waves as they rolled in. "She seems like a happy kid." Sarah smiled softly. "She tries to be." There was something about the way she said that. Something deeper behind the words. But before I could say anything, Emily came running back toward us again. "Mom, he should come with us next time." Sarah blinked. "Emily." "What?" Emily said innocently. "He's nice." I raised my hands jokingly. "I promise I'm not trying to invite myself." Sarah laughed a little. "I'm starting to think Emily makes all our decisions now." "She does," Emily said proudly. The three of us stood there watching the sunset. And somehow, the moment didn't feel awkward at all. It felt comfortable. Like we had known each other longer than just a few minutes. Emily suddenly pointed toward the sky. Look. The sun is going into the water. Sarah looked at the horizon. It does look like that sometimes. Emily turned to me. Do you think the sun sleeps in the ocean? I smiled. Maybe it does. She seemed very satisfied with that answer. See, Mom. I told you. Sarah laughed quietly. You're very convincing. The wind grew a little cooler as the sun dropped lower. Soon the sky turned purple and orange. People around the beach slowly started packing up and heading home. Emily sat down in the sand drawing shapes with a stick. Sarah watched her for a moment, then looked back at me. Thanks for being nice about the comment earlier. I laughed again. I think it might be the most unique introduction I've ever had. She smiled. Emily has a talent for surprising people. Well, I said, she definitely succeeded today. For a moment, Sarah didn't say anything. She just looked at the ocean. Then she glanced back at me again. This time, her expression was different. Thoughtful. Curious. Like she was trying to figure something out. Emily suddenly stood up again. Mom, can we get ice cream before we go? Sarah laughed. I knew that was coming. Emily looked at me. You should come too. I chuckled. Maybe another time. Emily thought about that seriously. Okay. But you have to come again. Sarah looked slightly embarrassed. Emily, you can't order people around. But Emily just smiled confidently. He will come back. I looked at the ocean one more time. Then I looked back at them. And somehow, I felt like she might be right. Because sometimes, life changes in the most unexpected moments. A quiet beach. A random meeting. A little girl who says exactly what she thinks. And a mother whose eyes seem to tell a story you don't know yet. At that moment, I had no idea what was waiting ahead. But something inside me said one thing very clearly. This wasn't just a random meeting. This was the beginning of a story. The next evening, I found myself walking toward the same beach again. At first, I told myself it was because I liked the sunset. The peaceful sound of the waves. The calm air that helped clear my mind after a long day. But if I was being honest with myself, there was another reason. I was hoping to see them again. Sometimes life brings strangers into your path in the most unexpected ways. And something about that small moment yesterday kept replaying in my mind. The little girl's confidence. Sarah's quiet smile, the way the three of us somehow felt comfortable within minutes of meeting. It was strange. But it was also nice. As I walked along the sand, the cool breeze brushed across the shoreline. The sky was beginning to glow with soft orange light as the sun slowly moved toward the horizon. And then I saw them. Emily was kneeling in the sand, building what looked like a very serious sandcastle. Sarah stood a few steps behind her, watching carefully. When Sarah noticed me walking closer, she paused for a moment. Then she smiled. Looks like the beach really is your favorite place, she said. I shrugged slightly. Maybe, or maybe I just got used to good company. She laughed softly. Before she could respond, Emily suddenly turned around. Her eyes lit up the moment she saw me. Mom, the nice guy is back. Sarah covered her face for a second. Emily. I raised my hands jokingly. It's okay. I kind of like that title. Emily ran over and stood right in front of me. I told you he would come back, she said proudly. I smiled. You sound very confident. Because I'm right, she replied. Sarah shook her head but couldn't stop smiling. We all sat down in the sand near Emily's half-finished castle. The waves rolled calmly nearby, and the beach was quieter than the day before. Emily pointed proudly at the sandcastle. This is my house. It's impressive, I said seriously. She pointed to another small pile of sand next to it. And that one is Mom's house. I nodded like an architect studying blueprints. Very well planned. Then she pointed at a third tiny mound. And that one is yours. Sarah immediately looked embarrassed. Emily. But I laughed. Well, I appreciate the real estate. Emily smiled proudly like she had just solved something important. For a while we talked about simple things. Emily told me about her school. Her favorite teacher. Her best friend who apparently never shares snacks. And how she once tried to teach her goldfish how to do tricks. Sarah and I listened while trying not to laugh too loudly. Eventually the conversation became quieter. Emily returned to building her sandcastle while Sarah and I watched the ocean. The sky had started turning deeper shades of orange and pink. "You come here often?" I asked. "Almost every week," Sarah said. "Emily loves the water." I watched Emily carefully placing tiny shells on top of her castle. "She seems very happy here." Sarah nodded. "Yes, she does." There was a small pause. Then she added quietly, "This place helped us through some difficult times." I didn't ask immediately. Sometimes people share their stories slowly. But Emily suddenly looked up again. "Mom, tell him." Sarah sighed softly. "Emily." Emily pointed at me. "He asked about Dad yesterday." The air grew slightly quieter. Sarah looked toward the ocean before speaking. "He left, a long time ago." Emily didn't react. She just kept playing in the sand. Like it was something she had already learned to live with. "I'm sorry," I said gently. Sarah gave a small smile. "Don't be." She looked at Emily again. "We figured things out." Emily suddenly stood up and ran toward the water again. "Look at the waves." Sarah watched her carefully. "You can go closer, but stay where I can see you." "I know." Emily shouted. "Kids always say that." I looked back at Sarah. "She seems very strong." "She had to be," Sarah said quietly. Then she looked at me. "But she's also still just a kid." For a moment, neither of us said anything. The ocean waves filled the silence. Then Emily came running back again. "Mom, what is it?" Emily looked between us carefully. Then she said something that made Sarah freeze. "Mom likes you." Sarah's eyes widened immediately. "Emily." I couldn't stop laughing. Emily looked confused. "What?" "It's true." Sarah covered her face again. "I'm so sorry." I smiled. "It's okay." But when I looked at Sarah again, I noticed something different. She wasn't just embarrassed. There was a softness in her eyes. Like maybe Emily had accidentally said something closer to the truth than anyone expected. Emily suddenly grabbed my arm. "Come see my sandcastle." I stood up and followed her a few steps closer to the water. She pointed proudly. "This is the tower." "It's very strong," I said. "Storm-proof." She nodded proudly. Then she looked at me very seriously. "You should come again tomorrow." I smiled. "Maybe I will." "Promise?" I thought about it for a second. Then I nodded. "Promise." She seemed very satisfied with that answer. As the sun slowly disappeared into the ocean, the sky turned deeper shades of purple and gold. People around the beach began leaving one by one. Emily walked back to Sarah and held her hand. "Can we get ice cream?" Sarah laughed. "I knew you were going to ask that." Emily looked at me. "You should come too." I chuckled. "Maybe next time." Emily pointed at me again confidently. "He will come back." Sarah smiled slightly. "We'll see." As they started walking toward the boardwalk, Emily suddenly turned around and waved at me. "Bye, nice guy." I waved back. "See you tomorrow." As I watched them disappear into the evening crowd, I realized something. Sometimes the most unexpected friendships begin with the simplest moments. A beach. A child's honesty. A quiet conversation. And a feeling that maybe life is about to take a turn you never planned. Before we continue the next chapter, I want to say something to everyone listening. If you're enjoying this story so far, please take a moment to support the channel. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. And if this story made you smile even a little, tell me in the comments. Which country are you watching from? I love seeing where all of you are listening from around the world. Now let's continue this story, because what happened next between Daniel, Sarah, and Emily was something none of them expected. The next few days passed quietly, but something inside me had already changed. Every evening around the same time, I found myself thinking about the beach. About the sound of the waves. About the warm sunset colors reflecting on the water. But more than that, I was thinking about Sarah and Emily. It's strange how quickly people can enter your life and suddenly become part of your routine. Just a few days earlier, they were complete strangers. Now, somehow, it felt natural to wonder if I would see them again. So the following evening, just before sunset, I walked back toward the beach. The sky was already glowing with soft shades of orange and pink. The air smelled like salt and summer, and the wind carried the peaceful sound of the ocean across the sand. As I reached the familiar spot near the shoreline, I scanned the beach. And then I saw them. Emily was running along the sand chasing the waves, laughing loudly every time the water touched her feet. Sarah stood nearby watching her carefully, her hair blowing gently in the wind. When she noticed me walking closer, her expression changed. At first there was surprise. Then a soft smile slowly appeared. "Well," she said as I approached, "looks like someone kept their promise." I smiled. I try to keep my promises. Before Sarah could say anything else, Emily turned around and spotted me. Her reaction was immediate. "He came back," she shouted. She ran straight toward me like we had known each other for years. "I told Mom you would come back." Sarah laughed from behind her. "You did say that." Emily crossed her arms proudly. "Because I'm always right." I pretended to think about it seriously. "That's a lot of confidence." "It's because I'm smart," Emily said matter-of-factly. Sarah shook her head, smiling. "Don't encourage her." The three of us walked closer to the water where the sand was cool and smooth beneath our feet. Emily immediately began drawing shapes in the sand with a stick she had found. "So," Sarah said quietly as we watched her, "do you come to the beach often? Or did Emily just recruit you into our routine?" I chuckled. "Maybe a little of both." She laughed softly. Emily suddenly stood up and pointed toward the ocean. "Look how big the waves are today." They weren't very big, but to a 7-year-old they probably felt enormous. "Careful," Sarah said. "I will," Emily shouted while running toward the water. We watched her together. For a moment neither of us said anything. Then Sarah spoke again, her voice quieter this time. "You know, Emily doesn't usually trust people this quickly." I looked at her. "She's just friendly." Sarah shook her head slowly. "No, not really." Her eyes stayed on Emily playing near the water. After her father left, she became very careful around people. I didn't interrupt. Sometimes silence is the best way to let someone continue their story. "She used to ask about him a lot," Sarah continued. "Where he went, why he didn't come back." The wind moved softly around us. But eventually, she stopped asking. I didn't know what to say to that. So I simply nodded. Sarah looked at me again. "But when she met you, something changed." "What do you mean?" I asked. "She laughs more," Sarah said. "And she talks about you at home." I laughed a little. "That's probably dangerous." Sarah smiled. "Maybe." Just then Emily came running back toward us again, holding 2 melting ice creams. "I got ice cream." She proudly handed one to Sarah and one to me. "Where did you get these?" Sarah asked, surprised. Emily pointed behind her. "The ice cream man." Sarah looked toward the boardwalk where a small cart stood. "You can't just take ice cream without telling me." Emily shrugged. I said please. I laughed. "Well, she does have good manners." Sarah shook her head but couldn't stop smiling. We stood there eating ice cream while watching the sun slowly drop toward the ocean. The sky was turning brighter shades of orange and red now. Emily sat back down in the sand again. "I'm building a bigger castle today," she announced. "A castle?" I asked. "Yes." "For who?" Sarah asked. Emily looked up at us like the answer was obvious. "For all of us." Sarah and I exchanged a quick glance. Emily continued building her masterpiece like it was the most important construction project in the world. A few minutes passed quietly. Then Sarah turned slightly toward me. "Daniel." "Yes." She hesitated for a moment. Then she said something I didn't expect. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being kind to Emily." I looked back toward the little girl working hard in the sand. "She's easy to like." Sarah's expression softened. "You don't know how much that means." For a moment our eyes met. And something in that moment felt different. The air between us felt quieter, deeper. Like we both realized there was something growing between these simple beach meetings. Emily suddenly jumped up again. Look. She pointed proudly at the sandcastle. This is the tower, and this is the wall, and this is the secret door. I walked closer to inspect the structure. This is impressive. She smiled proudly. It's the biggest one yet. Sarah walked over too. You've been working very hard. Emily looked between us carefully. Then she said something unexpected. You two should stand together. Sarah blinked. What? Emily nodded confidently. Next to the castle. Why? I asked. So it looks like a family picture. Sarah froze for a second. I laughed softly. Emily didn't seem to notice the tension. Stand here, she said while positioning us. Sarah and I stood awkwardly beside each other while Emily admired her work. Perfect, she said. Then she smiled happily. As the sun finally touched the horizon, the beach grew quieter again. The sky turned deep shades of purple and gold. Emily sat down in the sand, clearly tired from all her construction work. Sarah looked toward the sunset. Beautiful, she said quietly. I nodded. Yeah. But at that moment, I wasn't really looking at the sunset. I was looking at her. And when Sarah turned back toward me, our eyes met again. This time the look lasted a little longer. There was something unspoken there. Something neither of us said out loud. But we both felt it. And somehow, I had a feeling that these quiet beach meetings were about to turn into something much bigger than any of us expected. The next evening felt different from the moment I arrived at the beach. Maybe it was the weather. The sky was softer that day, painted with pale orange light, and the wind was calmer than usual. The ocean moved slowly, almost peacefully, as if the whole world had decided to slow down for a while. Or maybe the difference wasn't the weather at all. Maybe it was us. Over the past few days, meeting Sarah and Emily had quietly become part of my life. Something I started looking forward to every evening. And I had a feeling Sarah felt it too. When I reached the usual spot near the shoreline, I saw them sitting in the sand. Emily was drawing shapes again, her small hands moving quickly across the sand like an artist working on a masterpiece. Sarah sat beside her, watching the waves. When she noticed me approaching, she smiled in that calm, warm way I was starting to recognize. You're getting very consistent, she said. I laughed softly. I guess Emily's invitation was very convincing. Before Sarah could reply, Emily looked up. He's here, she shouted happily. She jumped up and ran toward me again. You came back. I said I would, I replied. Emily nodded proudly. Good. Because today is important. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Important. Emily pointed toward the sand where she had been drawing. I made something. Curious, I followed her back toward the spot. In the sand, she had drawn 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one medium, and one very small. That's us, Emily said happily. Sarah looked down at the drawing, then at Emily. Us. Emily pointed at the tall figure. That's Daniel. Then the second one. That's you, Mom. And finally the small one. And that's me. I laughed gently. That's a very nice drawing. But Emily wasn't finished yet. She looked up at Sarah and said something that made both of us freeze. Daniel should live with us. Sarah's eyes widened instantly. Emily. Emily looked confused. What? I tried not to laugh. Kids say funny things, I said. But Sarah didn't laugh. Instead, she looked down at the drawing again. Then she said something quietly. Sometimes kids say the truth. For a moment, neither of us moved. Emily had already gone back to drawing in the sand, completely unaware of how serious the moment suddenly felt. I looked at Sarah. She was staring at the ocean again, her expression thoughtful. The waves rolled slowly toward the shore. You know, she said softly, Emily hasn't drawn pictures like that in a long time. What do you mean? I asked. She used to draw our family when her dad was still around, Sarah explained. Her voice was calm, but there was emotion behind it. But after he left, she stopped drawing families. I looked back at the small picture in the sand. 3 stick figures holding hands. Sarah continued quietly. So seeing her draw something like that again, it surprised me. For a moment, we both watched Emily working carefully on her sand artwork. Then Sarah said something that caught me off guard. I haven't felt this comfortable with someone in years. I turned to look at her. She seemed slightly nervous now, like she had said more than she planned to. Life gets complicated, she continued quietly. You build walls without realizing it. The wind moved gently through her hair as she spoke. But sometimes, someone walks into your life and those walls start disappearing. I didn't know what to say at first. So I said the only honest thing I could think of. I feel it too. She looked at me. For a moment, everything around us felt quiet. The beach. The ocean. The wind. It was like the world had paused just long enough for something important to happen. Sarah took a slow breath. Daniel. I could tell she was about to say something serious. Something that had been building between us over the past few days. But before either of us could continue. Look. Emily suddenly shouted. We both turned around. She was pointing toward the horizon excitedly. The sunset is starting. The bright orange sun was slowly dropping toward the water, filling the sky with color. Emily ran closer to the shoreline again, jumping happily at the waves. The moment between Sarah and me faded. But it didn't disappear. It just paused. We walked slowly toward Emily together. She pointed at the sky. Look how big it is today. The sunset reflected across the ocean like a golden path. Sarah smiled. It's beautiful. Emily grabbed both our hands suddenly. Stand here with me. We looked at each other, slightly surprised. Why? I asked. So we can watch together, Emily said. And somehow, without thinking too much about it, we did. The 3 of us stood there facing the ocean. Emily in the middle, holding both our hands. The wind moved softly around us as the sun slowly disappeared into the water. And in that quiet moment, something felt very clear. This wasn't just friendship anymore. There was something deeper growing between us. Something neither Sarah nor I had said out loud yet. But we both felt it. As the last light of the sunset faded, Emily yawned loudly. I'm tired. Sarah laughed. That's what happens after building a whole sand city. Emily looked up at me. You'll come again tomorrow, right? I smiled. Of course. She nodded happily. Good. Sarah looked at me again as we started walking back toward the boardwalk. That same quiet expression returned to her eyes. The one that said there was still something left unsaid between us. And somehow I knew something important. The conversation we almost had tonight wasn't finished yet. The next day felt different from the moment I woke up. Sometimes you can't explain it. There's just a feeling in the air, like something important is about to happen. For the past few days, meeting Sarah and Emily at the beach had slowly become the best part of my evenings. What started as a random encounter had turned into something meaningful. And after the conversation Sarah and I almost had the night before, I couldn't stop thinking about it. There were words left unfinished between us. Feelings left unspoken. That evening, just before sunset, I walked toward the beach again. The sky was glowing softly, and the ocean breeze carried the familiar sound of waves rolling toward the sand. But when I reached our usual spot, something was different. Emily wasn't there. Instead, Sarah stood alone near the shoreline, looking out at the ocean. The wind gently moved through her hair as the sunlight reflected across the water. When she heard my footsteps in the sand, she turned around. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled. You came. I smiled back. I said I would. I looked around the beach. Where's Emily? Sarah laughed softly. She's at her friend's birthday party. Oh, I said. For the first time, it's just us. For a moment, that realization hung quietly in the air. Over the past few days, Emily had always been between us, talking, laughing, building sandcastles, filling every moment with energy. But now, the beach felt quieter. More serious. We started walking slowly along the shoreline together. The waves moved gently beside us, leaving smooth patterns in the wet sand. Sarah took a deep breath. You know, Emily said something interesting yesterday. I looked at her. What did she say? Sarah smiled slightly. She told me that you smile like someone who belongs with us. I laughed quietly. Kids have wild imaginations. Sarah shook her head. No. She looked directly at me. Kids see things more clearly than adults sometimes. We stopped walking. The sunset was beginning to spread warm colors across the sky. Daniel, she said softly. Yes. She hesitated for a moment, then continued. These past few days have meant more to us than you probably realize. I stayed quiet, letting her finish. When Emily's father left, things were difficult, she explained. For a long time it was just the two of us. And I built a life that felt safe. She looked out at the ocean again. But safe can also mean lonely. The wind moved gently between us. And then suddenly you appeared on the beach. She smiled faintly. Because of Emily's very honest comment. I laughed. I'll never forget that introduction. Sarah laughed too. But then her expression softened again. Since then, Emily has been happier. She paused. And honestly, so have I. For a moment the world around us felt very quiet. The sound of waves filled the silence. Then she looked at me again. And I think Emily was right about something. What's that? I asked. She took a small step closer. I think you do belong with us. My heart beat a little faster when she said that. I looked at her, trying to understand everything she was saying without words. Then I reached for her hand. Slowly. Gently. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers closed softly around mine. And for the first time since we met, the feeling between us finally became real. Not just a possibility. Not just a quiet thought. But something true. Sarah's eyes filled with emotion, but she smiled. You know Emily is going to be very happy about this. I laughed. She predicted it before we did. Suddenly, a voice shouted behind us. I knew it. We both jumped in surprise and turned around. Emily stood a few steps away, holding her small backpack and smiling like she had just solved the biggest mystery in the world. Emily, Sarah said in shock. What are you doing here? Emily shrugged. The party ended early. She crossed her arms proudly. And I wanted to check something. Sarah laughed in disbelief. How long have you been standing there? Emily thought for a second. Long enough. She walked closer to us and looked at our hands. Then she smiled even wider. See, Mom. I told you he was nice. Sarah shook her head, trying not to laugh. You were right. Emily grabbed my hand with her other hand. Now we can all walk together. And just like that, she stood between us. One hand holding mine, the other holding Sarah's. We started walking slowly along the shoreline as the sun disappeared into the ocean. The sky turned deep orange and purple above the water. Emily looked up proudly. Now we look like my drawing. I laughed. The one in the sand? She nodded. Yep. Sarah looked down at Emily and smiled. You planned all of this, didn't you? Emily shrugged again. Maybe. We all laughed together. As we continued walking along the beach, I realized something important. Sometimes love doesn't begin with grand gestures. Sometimes it starts with small moments. A quiet beach. A random conversation. A child who speaks the truth without hesitation. And two people who slowly realize they were meant to find each other. That night, as the stars began to appear above the ocean, one thing felt certain. This wasn't just the end of a story. It was the beginning of something new. And before this story ends, I want to say something to everyone listening. If you enjoyed this story, please support the channel. Like this video, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story made you smile even a little, tell me something in the comments too. Which country are you watching from? I love seeing how stories like this travel across the world and connect people from different places. Thank you for being here. And remember, sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the simplest moments.